Welcome back to NTV Weekend Edition, and many thanks for staying with us. The 16 Days of Activism Against Gender Violence is an international campaign that started in 1991. The campaign has been used as an organizing strategy by individuals and groups around the world to call for the elimination of all forms of violence against women. The Church of Uganda launched a campaign called Thursdays in Black, which focuses on ways that individuals can challenge attitudes that cause rape, violence on a personal and public level. To help us enlighten us on this and more, we have Miss Anena right there. Irene, she's the program officer, gender and social justice at the province of the Church of Uganda. Miss Anena, and many thanks for coming to NTV Uganda.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Now, first off, what is the 16 days of activism and what is the role of the church in this?
The 16 Days of Gender Activism is a global campaign, just like you said, that started in 1991. And it's a campaign that focuses on challenging gender-based violence, specifically towards women and girls. And the intention of focusing on women and girls is because research has shown that the majority of the survivors or victims of gender-based injustices are women. And this is a global statistic that we see 1 in 3 women at least has suffered gender-based violence, compared to the statistics of men.
Don't you think the men have been neglected? Don't the men suffer any kind of gender-based violence?
We do agree that the men also do suffer gender-based violence, but it doesn't leave out the realistic statistic that has been proven that majority of the perpetrators of gender-based violence are the men. When we look at the different forms of gender-based violence, for instance, defilement, I mean, why people tend to think that the men are also being neglected, it's only when we are looking at, intimate partner violence, whereby, yes, men do suffer as well. But when we look at other gender-based violence in its forms, for example, teenage pregnancy, defilement, economic violence, amongst others, you see that, denial of opportunities. You see that women are the majority of the victims in this case.
Indeed. Okay, traditional NGOs have been raising awareness about gender-based violence for the longest time. And I believe people in Uganda are familiar with their stand. Now, do religious organizations like religious organizations like the Church of Uganda bring something different to this table? And if so, what is it?
Yes, the religious institution brings something new. We do appreciate that a lot has been done by other, civil society organizations in the country, but then also the government. But we see the role of faith in this case, that when we look at the population of the country, over 98% of the population ascribe to a particular religious belief, whether as Anglicans, Catholics or Muslim, and others. And so we see the role of faith to be in a position to provide spaces, given the level of influence that faith leaders have to the population in regards to, challenging those negative social-cultural norms that can perpetuate gender-based violence. We see faith as a very strong key stakeholder in this,
So the church plays a big role because people actually listen more to religious leaders.
Yes.
So how can religious leaders, like the faith leaders right there, play a role in the campaign against eliminating gender-based violence?
One, we can play a role through advocacy, but then also utilizing the spaces that we have. For example, the power of the pulpit. A lot of, ministering, but then even during that moment of ministering as a priest or a pastor, I mean, when you utilize this space to send information on ending gender-based violence, it will have a much bigger impact to the people,
And the Christians out there, what should they be doing about this issue?
One thing is we need to acknowledge that gender-based violence is a tragic reality. And as Christians, we have a role to play. I mean, it's something that, gets into changing our attitude, practices and belief. And so as Christians, we have a role to start the change within us before we can, translate out there to be able to influence other people to change. Yes.
Now, tomorrow the world shall be observing World AIDS Day, and I want you to help me link gender-based violence to HIV. Is there a correlation between gender-based violence and HIV?
Yes, there is a correlation, and that is, why the 16 days has been strategically put to run from the 25th of November, which is the International Day for Elimination of Violence Against Women, and it goes through to the 1st of December, which is the International World AIDS Day, and then to the 10th of December, which is the Human Rights Day. And so the correlation between HIV/AIDS and gender-based violence is that, one, we've realized circumstances where people, out of their irresponsible behavior, per se, someone knows they're already infected with the virus, and they have the tendency of having a responsible sexual behavior of, like, maybe not using protection and being deliberately able to infect another person innocently. And that increases chances of people getting infected with HIV/AIDS. But then also when we see amongst the discordant couple, we've also seen scenario whereby the two are not speaking the same language. And in that case, there's chance that you are increasing the risk of infection to your partner. And then also maybe by the time that you're not speaking the same language, there's bound to be violence happening.
And the Church of Uganda did launch a campaign called Thursdays in Black. What do you hope this will achieve?
The Thursdays in Black campaign is a campaign that it's a growing campaign that is focusing on ending rape and violence. And when we see the trend of things happening in our country, we've of late seen a lot of media report on cases of defilement. And we see a lot being, struggling silently. They do not have where to speak. They do not know who to turn to. And then so we focus on this Thursdays in Black campaign to be able to provide, space where people are able to understand that, yes, I have where I can speak. This is actually a violation of someone's dignity and right. And so the church is taking up on this campaign, building up on what has already been started. The World Council of Churches started, is making this campaign to be, widely known. And as I said, it's a growing campaign that we feel we should be part of to address rape and violence in the country.
So that is the objective of Thursdays in Black.
Yes.
What is the expected outcome?
We expect to see that people are able to realize that rape is a violation of human rights. Violence is also a violation of human rights. And by understanding that, we are able to, to be conscious and act, with feelings of not violating another person's right. And in that way, it will, lead to a reduction.
Indeed.
Yes.
So any other parting words as we wrap up this conversation?
One thing is we all need to accept that gender-based violence is not a woman's issue. In most cases, people tend to think it's a women's issue, but it is a human issue. It affects both the women and men. And so, one, I would encourage that whether you're a woman or a man, when you know that you are being violated, speak up, seek help, find support, because we know that several people others have, committed suicide because they are struggling with issues of violence. Others have, done other atrocities as a result of the anger and aggression because of the impact of GBV. Others have, their health have been affected physically, and also, psychologically, people are affected as a result of GBV. And so we need to take up and denounce it in the most strongest way, with the strongest voice. And as the church, we are saying we denounce gender-based violence, and will always stand to speak against it.
Program Officer, Gender and Social Justice, that is Irene Nena. Many thanks for having made the time to speak to us.
My pleasure.
The conversation has been centered on how best this country can eliminate gender-based violence in its entirety. And you've heard from Irene Nena what ought to be done. Let's take a very short break. We'll be right back with more.